Hi, Pete Swiderski here. Let's talk a little about three of the most common chords that you're going to see in jazz improvisation. So the three common chords that are going to comprise up almost all of the chords that you're seeing are, and if you remember our discussion about modes earlier, there are 7 modes, and the three that are going to be most common for us are Ionian, Dorian, and Mixolydian. Ionian, Dorian, and Mixolydian. Now, for mode numbers, the Ionian is the second mode. I'm sorry. The Ionian is the first mode. I got ahead of myself there. The Dorian is the second mode, and the Mixolydian is the 5th mode. So a 1, a 2, and a 5. Oftentimes those will be in Roman numerals. And when they're in Roman numerals, it's capital, lowercase, and then the capital followed by a 7. We'll get more into that later of why that's the case. So if a composer wants you to play something in Ionian mode, they're not going to call it Ionian mode. Instead, what they're going to do is indicate it like this: C major, or D major, or E flat major, or whatever it is. And remember earlier from the chord discussion, that could be followed by 7, 9, 11, 13. Now if a composer wants you to play something in Dorian, they're going to indicate it like this: minor. Now the minor can be indicated a couple of ways besides just that little, looks like minus sign. It can be D lowercase m. It could be D M I, but D, this sign here, that is the typical one. And again, that could be followed by 7, 9, 11, or 13. Now, if a composer wants to play for you to play something in Mixolydian, it would be something like this: G7. Now, on the Mixolydian, it must be followed by a 7. If it's not followed by 7 and it's just G by itself, then that's considered to be Ionian, or another name for Ionian, I guess I should say here, is major, is another name for Ionian. So on your Mixolydians, it will be G7, G9, G11, G13. If the 7, 9, 11, or 13 are not there, then it's not Mixolydian. It'll be Ionian, or major. Now, some other ones that you'll end up seeing are chords that have altered tones in them. So it could say G7, then it might have an alteration like a sharp 9 or a flat 9 or a sharp 5, something like that. That's another lesson for another day, but just know that's still a dominant 7th. Mixolydian is just altered. Now, I threw out another term there. Typically when it comes to Mixolydians, they'll have a couple of different names of things that you should be aware of. Mixolydians might be called dominant, or dominant 7ths. They might also be called a 5 chord, and that would probably end up being written with a Roman numeral 5 chords, and you might also just call them Mixolydians. So I'll kind of throw those terms around interchangeably. So let's talk more about the Ionians. Okay, so Ionians are pretty simple. They're just major scales. So to form the chords, you take the major scale, play 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. You can go up to 11 and 13, and that all works very, very nice and convenient, and you could also play the scale that's associated with it. Now, if we're talking about Dorians, there's a completely different method for forming Dorians. Let's get into that now. Clear up some space here. So a composer has on the page D minor 7, and you know with a D minor 7 you're supposed to play Dorian. So how do you form a Dorian? Well, let's go back to our theory on modes. So remember that Dorian is the second mode. This is the most important thing to remember. So let's first just write out a scale. I'm going to take the scale all the way 2 octaves: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, repeating D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So our modes are Ionian is the first mode, Dorian's the second mode, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian finally is the seventh mode. So with the modes, if I play from C to C, but I use the key of C, that's the first mode called Ionian. D to D, but instead of using the key of D, I'm going to again use the key of C. That's the second mode, Dorian. So I play D to D, and instead of playing it normally with the two sharps that I would play it with, I'm going to play it with no sharps or flats, and that's Dorian. And then the same thing with E to E is your Phrygian, F to F is Lydian, G to G Mixolydian, etc. So if let's say the chord symbol again says D minor 7, I know that means Dorian. So I remember I've got D, and Dorian is the second mode, so I'm just going to put a little 2 under there. So now I know I have to play from D to D, and I'm going to do it not in the key of D, but instead of doing it in the key of D, I'm going to do it in the key of whatever is one whole step away going down from D. That's how you're going to remember it. So D going down one whole step is C. So I'm going to play from D to D, and I'm going to use the key of C. Let's do a couple more examples here. Let's say it says G minor 7. So I'm going to use the exact same process. I start with a G here, and I say G minor 7 means the composer wants me to play Dorian. So I know Dorian is the second mode. So now I'm going to play from G to G, but instead of using the key of G, I'm going to use whatever it is that is 1 over here, and that's a whole step down. So I go down a whole step from G, and I get to F. F. So I'm going to play from G to G in the key of F. G to G in the key of F. So G had 1 sharp. I'm going to abandon that sharp, and I'm going to instead go with 1 flat, which is, I'm sorry, 2 flats, 1 flat, B flat. Let's do another example. This one's a little trickier one. Let's say the chord symbol says F minor 7. So same process. I know F is the second mode because it's Dorian, right? So I'm going to play from F to F, and to find my key signature I always have to go and find whatever 1 is, and I know that 1 is a whole step down from F. So F down a half step is E. A lot of people might think that it's E, but F to E is only a half step, so I have to go 1/2 step more. That takes me to E flat. So I play from F to F in the key of E flat. So let's use this one as a case study. So typically an F major scale is going to look like this. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. That is your typical F major scale. Now the chord symbol, let's say the chord symbol we're going to look at says F minor 7. So I know what I'm going to do is, instead of playing F major scale like this, I'm going to lower it a whole step and use that key, so that's E flat. So that means I'm going to play F, G, A, B flat is already in there, C, D, and I'm going to add E flat to that chord, or that scale, because an E flat major scale has B flat, E flat, and then finally the third is A flat. So you get F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. So I've changed it from just 1 flat to now having 3 flats in it. Now the second way to form Dorian, so that's way number 1. So way number 1 is go down a whole step, use that key. Go down a whole step and use that key. Now way number 2 to form those Dorian scales is simply, I'm going to say it as this, flat 3 and flat 7 of major. Flat 3 and flat 7 of major. So what that means is to take any major scale and then lower the 3rd and lower the 7th note of the major scales, and it will change it into Dorian. So let's take an example here again. We'll go with our F major scale. And F major scale, as you know, has just one flat in it, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. Now if I lower the 3rd and I lower the 7th note a half step, that takes A and lowers it a half step to A flat, takes E, lowers it a half step to E flat. So the result is the same. So if I go down a half step from F, or I'm sorry, a whole step from F to E flat, that gives me 3 flats, and I apply that, I get A flat, B flat, E flat. Or if I take an F major scale, lower the 3rd and lower the 7th note a half step, I still end up with B flat, E flat, and A flat. Now let's try one more case study here. We'll randomly pick one. Let's go with D. So let's say we'll go, well, let's not go with D, that's an easy one. We'll go with something a little more, no, let's go with D because it's simple and clear. So let's say our chord symbol says D minor 7. So we know that rule number 1, or way number 1, says go down a whole step and use that key. So down a whole step from D is C, so I'd play from D to D in the key of C. And you know that a D major scale typically looks like this, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. That's your typical D major scale. If I go down a whole step and apply the key of C, that means this F sharp goes away and the C sharp goes away because the key of C has no sharps and no flats. So that's way number 1. I end up with this scale. Way number 2 is take your major scale, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. And what I'm going to do is, as it says, flat 3 and flat 7 of major. So the 3rd note is F sharp. Now that doesn't mean make it F flat. Flat 3 means lower it a half step. So lowering F sharp a half step means it becomes F. Lowering C sharp, the 7th note a half step, means it becomes C. So we end up with D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. The other way, way number 1, which was use the key of C, you end up with the same way. So for me, I prefer the method of knowing which key signature you're in. If you know which key signature you're in, you'll always be able to successfully improvise over that key signature rather than having to always think, oh my gosh, I'm in 6 sharps, I'm going to take away 3 sharps. No, it's much, or take away the 3rd and the 7th. It's much easier just to say, okay, I know which key I'm actually in. So in the next lesson here, we'll talk specifically on how to form Mixolydian. So Mixolydians, as you remember, they are the, Mixolydians are the 5th mode. So let's say my chord symbol again says G7. So G7, that means I'm on the 5th mode, G7. That is the 5th mode. So the goal always when finding out modes is always find out what 1 is. If you know what 1 is, then you know what the key is. So 4, 3, 2, 1. So you go G, F, E, D, C. Now for me, it's easier to go up 6, 7, 8 than to go down 4, 3, 2, 1. So if I'm on G here, then I'm going to go up A, B, C. So I'm going to play from G to G, but instead of using the key of G, which is 1 sharp, I'm going to use the key of C, which is no sharps, no flats. So let's try another example here. D. Let's say it says D7 on my chord changes. Now I know that means that I'm going to play D Mixolydian. And we know that Mixolydian is the 5th mode, so I'm going to go 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's D, E, F, in G. So I'm going to play from D to D, but instead of using the key of D, I'm going to use the key of G. So that's how to form a Mixolydian, way number 1. Way number 2, okay, sorry, technical difficulty there. So way number 2 to form Mixolydian is to do just like we did with the other one. On the Dorian it was flat 3, flat 7, but on the Mixolydian it's going to be flat 7 only. So let's say again we're at the D7. There we go, D7. So way number 2 is then flat 7 of major. So our D major scale would look like this: D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. That's our D major, 2 sharps. So flat 7 of major, so I know that that's our D major scale. I look for the 7th pitch, which is C sharp, and I'm going to lower that C sharp a half step by taking the sharp off and then making it C natural. So way number 1 gives us D to D, D to D in the key of G. Remember D was 5, 6, 7, 8. D to D in the key of G. That's way number 1. And way number 2 is take the major scale, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, lower the 7th pitch a half step, C sharp goes down to C. So again, for my money, I prefer to have the key signatures under my fingers rather than go with the trick of flat 3, flat 7 for Dorian and flat 7 for Mixolydian. Now this will take some time, but I promise you that it'll be worth your time if you can get these key signatures under your fingers and instantly be able to recognize what they look like and how they're applied. Hope that helps. Thanks for listening, and sorry for the technical difficulties. So to form Ionian, that's not a problem. It's